So it's time to go over our speech number 3, which is our informative speeches. Now, in our text, we find out that there's actually 4 different types of informative speeches. And I want to preface this with just saying that there are countless times throughout your life that you will be really benefited and benefiting others if you know how to put together a clear and effective informative speech. Right off the top of my head, I can think of probably a good chunk of the rest of the classes that you will take at CSUSB could require you to be giving like informative type presentations, and in your future employment, in your future volunteer work, or maybe different church events or things that you might be doing, informative speeches are used a lot. So these 4 different types of informative speeches are speeches about objects, processes, events, and concepts. So in this class, our speech is actually a speech about processes, and that is all the requirements are listed on speech 3, and it's informative, I call it demonstrative speech. And one example that I can give you of a speech about a process is, let's say that Daniela wants to do a makeup tutorial on using Jeffree Star's cosmetics. And it would be really important that she spoke very clearly. Each step was very clear, so the audience could literally learn exactly how she did each individual step as she went along. And so speaking clearly and accurately is really important in informative speeches. Another type of speech is speech about objects. So an example that I can give you about speech about objects would be, let's say Alonzo decides he wants to give a speech about shoes. That's a perfect example for a speech about objects. Now, what would be really important in not only this type of informative speech, but all of them, all 4 of them, regardless of which one you choose, is that we want to teach our audience something. We're either teaching them something new, or we are teaching or we're expanding their knowledge that they already have. So we never want to give an informative speech that's just common knowledge, because it's going to bore your audience, okay? So if Alonzo wanted to do an informative speech about shoes, the way that he would make sure that he did this effectively is he would incorporate things that maybe most people don't know about shoes. Couple ideas just off the top of my head. Let's say there's a real obscure shoe that is outrageously expensive. Maybe it's very hard to get. Maybe it's made out of very unusual materials. This is reminding me, I have a friend whose brother is actually a shoe artist, and he just drew pictures of Post Malone on her white Vans as a gift to her. So that would be an example of maybe something that's not really common knowledge that he could weave into this speech about shoes. Another type of speech is speeches about events. So an example, let's say that Sandy was on a trip to Mexico, and she went to this amazing event, and most of us don't know about it. She could give a speech about that particular event as an informative speech. So those are just the 3 examples. Each of them, it's very important that whatever you're putting out for information, it's very organized, it's very clear, It's very accurate, again, because your job is you're informing the audience, you're teaching the audience, you're expanding their knowledge. The last type of informative speech in our text is a speech about concepts. So that could be a speech about beliefs, philosophies, ideas on core beliefs of the Catholic religion. That's a perfect idea of an informative speech on concepts. So I hope that helps kind of breaking down the different types of speeches. And again, in this class, your speech 3 is a demonstrative speech, which is a speech about processes. Now, what is really important to keep in mind is sometimes students come up with informative speech topics that are, they're really better suited for persuasion than informing. So it's a common mistake that I see in this speech is that, I'll give you an example. Let's say one of you wanted to do a speech about the process of the death penalty. And in that compilation of getting all your research and materials and everything, you really have strong feelings about the death penalty. And it's as if you're not just informing us about the facts, but we can hear that you really feel a certain way and you're sharing that certain way with us as if you were trying to convince us or steer us that direction or that belief. Now, at that point, it is no longer an informative speech, it's a persuasive speech. So if you have a topic like that, I want you to just consider, or I just want to suggest you move it to the persuasive. Sometimes students can pull it off, and how they do it is they have to present both sides and not ever share their opinion and literally say to the audience, it's up to you to decide. But I've only seen it done really well, like twice in my classes. And for the most part, the feedback I get from students who go ahead and use that kind of topic in an informative speech is they say it was way too much work and it just didn't come out as cohesive as they would have liked. So make sure that you clear your topics with me. I'm going to be asking you to send me your topics and the sources that you have gathered that you're going to use in the speech prior. So I will put those specific instructions in discussion board, but I do that for a few different reasons. I want you to send me your topics and the sources that you have, because I want to keep us from duplicating topics in this class. I'd like everybody to have a different topic. It'll make it more interesting. And then I want to make sure that you kind of are on the right track with the best supporting materials as possible. So with our speeches, it's going to be very important that you really break it down, break each step of what you're trying to demonstrate to us down. You'll want to be very specific and clear with your language. You're not going to want to use technical terms that everybody doesn't know, okay? Because we won't be able to follow your demonstration as well. And if you do, if you need to, it's okay. But I want you to stop then and then define that in our terms that we will understand. And, you know, just a side note on the scholarly sources, because I am asking you to cite for this demonstrative speech at least one scholarly source. And I'm going to say 2 other common sources. In this demonstrative speech, you might think, how on earth am I going to come up with a scholarly source? Well, I actually went back and I asked myself about my own informative speech that I did in my own college public speaking class. And I did a demonstration teaching the class how to make sushi. And so I was thinking when I was developing this for you, I wonder if I could have gotten a scholarly source on sushi. And so I actually looked at the CSUSB library website, and sure enough, I found a scholarly article about the history of sushi in California. And so the point being is you're going to be able to find scholarly sources if you need help doing that because, you know, let's say it's a makeup tutorial and you're like, how am I going to, you know, I don't know what to search to find this, you know, when you need help, please don't be overwhelmed. I would love to help you find a scholarly source that fits your demonstrative speech. So that's pretty much the rundown on informative speeches, at least the basic for you to move forward. And just make sure that you are including all the steps. You're not using technical language that your audience will not understand. You are not being persuasive. You are just being informative. And you are not telling us stuff that everybody knows. You need to be teaching us something that's interesting to us. And I want to say, like, really, don't be afraid to put your creativity in this. You know, be yourself. Again, getting back to being yourself. Those are the best speeches. And try to think of examples, real life examples that you can relate to and that we can relate to as you go through your demonstration. And that's another way that you will keep your audience more engaged with your demonstrative speeches.